Chag Sameach, everyone. Happy Sukkot. Just before we officially start our program this evening, you'll hear a little bit later this evening, before too long, about a particular video-based project that is connected to our theme this evening. But I just want to welcome Lynn Weissman, who is filming this evening. And just to make anyone aware, if anyone is uncomfortable or doesn't choose to be in the scene on camera during the course of the evening. She's really focused on the presentations, but we'll have some Q&A at the end. The table that's sort of in the back corner over there, or right next to it, is an area that will remain off camera. So if anybody doesn't wish to be on camera, that's a good place to sit. You'll be able to hear everything and see everything, and that way you have the choice to not be in the camera zone if you choose. And we're very grateful that she was able to join us this evening. Back at the beginning of the summer, Elaine Solomon and I went to a launch event at Hebrew College that was bringing together people from Jewish communities all over the Boston area. In fact, Keshet, the organization that does LGBT advocacy and education and training in the Jewish community, tells us that we have over 70 congregations, Jewish congregations in Massachusetts, who have gotten themselves on board, involved, doing education and advocacy work, specifically in the lead up to the vote this November, where there is a ballot item number 3, that a group managed to get enough signatories to put on a ballot item that is quite unique, especially in the state of Massachusetts, one that would roll back equal protections for some of the citizens in our state. Specifically, it would, if it was passed, would roll back the protections in public space for people who are transgender. This is part of a larger statewide campaign to educate people about how important it is to vote yes on 3. We keep emphasizing that because, as is often the case with these ballot initiatives, they intentionally word them in a way that is confusing so that one might accidentally intend one thing and vote another way. So for this particular ballot initiative, it will be important to vote yes to keep existing protections in place. Protections that were passed by the Massachusetts Senate and Congress a couple of years ago, overwhelmingly, and signed into law by Governor Baker. So no question that there was widespread support within our legislature for this piece of legislation. So tonight you're going to have an opportunity to learn a little bit about what I'm talking about, what that's about, but more specifically to hear about individuals who are themselves either transgender or someone who is the parent of someone who is transgender, because this is not just about legislation. Legislation is only important because it actually shapes and impacts real people's lives. And so we need to have an opportunity, particularly for some of us who might not have had an opportunity in our daily to and fro, to encounter, to be friends with, to know people who are transgender, an opportunity to hear about their journeys and their experiences so that we can better understand what it means, if it's not our personal experience, to be an ally, to be a friend, and to understand the significance of this upcoming vote. When Elaine and I were at this launch event, one of the presenters that night, who themselves was a transgender woman, spoke about, through poetry actually, a connection to Sukkot. And that really planted the seed that, given that over the last few years we've used our Erev Sukkot time to have a program after our festival celebrations that's on some kind of current issue of relevance and significance in our country and in our experiences, that the message that this particular poet presented, this was the time and the place that we would address it, as they talked about how this is the festival in which we are commanded to live in booths to occupy the booths. So when it comes to November, we need to occupy the voting booths and make our voices heard. And the connection was made, and it was tonight is the night for this program. A couple of things just before we start. Please, if you could make sure your cell phones are turned off. That will be really helpful so we don't have any sounds, particularly as we're recording, distracting the program. On your way in, there was a table on which there's material of a variety of kinds. There is some badges and pins, some of which were made by Anya Kit McGowan, right here in front of me, by Jay, but brought by Anya. So we say hi to Jay, who I think is joining us by live stream, and thank you for the buttons. The buttons are, like the one I have, a way of letting people know what pronouns you wish to be addressed by. So there are choices of buttons there. One of our speakers this evening, Elijah Cohen-Gordon, has his card over there for those who might like to maintain a connection after tonight's program. And there is also a sign-up sheet. One of the things that we're doing beyond educating, one of the things that's really important to me this evening is that I hope at the end of tonight you won't just walk out understanding more and having been met and inspired by people who have inspiring stories to share, but that you will recognize that the ask tonight is not just that you vote to keep equal protections for all in our state, but that you become an advocate who will tell your friends and your neighbors what this is about and why it is so important that they vote. There are many different ways to do that, informally, on Facebook, social media, but we are partnering in the Metro West area with congregations in Sudbury and in Framingham. And on October 7th, there will be a Canvas Day in the Framingham area. From 10 to 3, we will meet at Temple Beth Am, where Sharon Sobel is the rabbi, and we will have a little bit of training and then an opportunity to do some door-to-door canvassing. And we hope that a contingent from this congregation will join the members of those other congregations and be part of that activity day. If you cannot be part of that activity day, we will be sending out a follow-up email to this event that talks about other opportunities in the region to get involved and do more, but that is the first ask. And you may have heard, and if you didn't pick it up in the announcements over the High Holy Days, you'll see it again in our emails, that one of our 40th year projects this year is the Brit Olam project. Our Social Action Committee and our Social Action co-chairs are here tonight, Amy Rosenberg and Mason Haber, right there. Brit Olam is something that we as a congregation have signed on to with the Religious Action Center, a covenant for the world. And that covenant that we've made as a Reformed congregation with the Religious Action Center is that social action is a core piece of our identity as a Reformed Jewish congregation. We've signed up to maintain our connection to advocate on a number of issues that are core to the work we've already been doing around homelessness, around refugees, and around transgender issues as well. What we're asking for our 40th year is that every member of the congregation sign a personal Brit Olam, which you can do on our temple website. If you go under community to mitzvah opportunities, you'll see Brit Olam. And what you're doing is you're signing up to say that you will do at least one act of loving kindness, one act of social justice this year, and you will invite somebody else to do it with you. It would be lovely if it was somebody from within the community, within the congregation, but the idea that not just to do a mitzvah, but it's a mitzvah to invite somebody else to do a mitzvah with you. And this Canvas Day is one of those opportunities. So tonight we're going to hear from 3 speakers and then have an opportunity for some Q&A. First of all, I'm going to invite up Sarah Kipp, who will kick us off this evening, and then we will be hearing from Jake Bogner, who is a member of Congregation B'nai Israel in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I was the assistant and then associate rabbi. So I know Jake longer than I know any of you. And I'm so pleased and delighted that he was able to come up and join us for this program tonight. And Elijah Cohen-Gordon, who I've known since I've been here in this community, and very delighted to reintroduce to all of you this evening. So I think, was there anything that I said I was going to announce that I forgot? Okay. So with no further ado, Sarah. Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to start with a heartfelt welcome first to our rabbis, Rabbi Gurvitz and Rabbi Idison, for creating this opportunity on Sukkot and for recognizing the importance of the conversation we're about to have this evening. I'm joined, as Rabbi said, by two amazing individuals, Jake Bogner and Eli Cohen-Gordon, and I've had the distinct pleasure and fun time of working with them to create this evening. Jake and Eli are fun and funny, and from my perspective, strong and courageous individuals, and it's our honor to be with you this evening. Our hope, our collective hope for this evening, is that by hearing our stories and having an opportunity to ask questions and hear answers, that you will join us not only in our journeys, but also our commitment to creating Jewish spaces that are more inclusive, and that the world that we live in becomes a safer, more welcoming place as well. Last Sunday was my birthday, and I am a morning person. So even though my mom and I had agreed that we would speak later in the day, I woke up very energetic and couldn't help myself. So I gave her a call, and I hear this sleepy, hello? And I said, hi, Mom, thanks for giving me life. And she said, still waking up, sure, well, thanks for being only a 45-minute labor. That Monday evening, a few years ago when I was born, Dr. Verrilli caught me, took a look, and said, it's a girl. And here, 44 years later, I still identify as female. While people often talk about transgender folks and transgender, for those of us who identify with the gender that we were assigned at birth, we have an adjective too. It's cisgender. And so I was assigned female at birth. I still identify as female. That means I am cisgender, and I am a cisgender parent of a transgender teen. I have been a member here at Congregation B'nai Shalom since 2000, and I was very excited this year to finally make it into the High Club. 18 years felt really significant, so I was very excited about that. I met some of you way back when Charlotte Bond and I were the very first co-chairs of Yad B'Yad, which is the group now known as CBS Cares. And many of you have seen me through the years singing in our temple choir, usually with the men in the back, holding a strong tenor line, at times with a huge 7-month pregnant belly. I have two children, Anya, who is here this evening, who is 13, and Jay, who is 16 and is joining us via the live stream. And Jay has given me permission to share with you everything that I'm about to say. It's a well-vetted talk. Eli, one of our speakers tonight, reminded me that it is often helpful to share with folks in advance that transgender is an adjective, not a noun. So my teen, Jay, is artistic, adjective, and evidenced by the pronoun buttons that they designed for this evening. Jay is also an entrepreneur, noun, demonstrated by the fact that they sell these buttons online and to interested groups. So if you want your free ones, get them on the way out. Jay is intelligent, adjective, and Jay is transgender, adjective, which means that they don't identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. Unlike my 45-minute labor, Jay and I labored for 28 hours. And on a Friday night at 8:14 in August of 2002, Jay was born. I remember calling Rabbi Haken the next morning early and sharing with her the news and setting the date for the naming ceremony. And I remember her saying, a Shabbos baby. We wondered if something was up and we didn't see you at services last night. So we assigned Jay a gender at birth. We gave Jay a gendered name that was not Jay. And 8 days later, in a beautiful, intimate ceremony in our home with Rabbi Haken and our family and friends, we gave Jay their Hebrew name, another gendered name. The way that I explain our journey to people is to say simply that as Jay's parents, we got it wrong. We didn't assign them the correct gender at birth, and we chose names that really didn't fit at all when we found out who Jay really is. Some people ask me if I knew or had a sense that Jay was transgender before they came out. In some ways, maybe. There were things that Jay said, and I noticed how Jay dressed, and I had a sense inside that we were on a journey that was not yet clear to me. Jay, in hindsight, now looking back, will say that for them, their journey was not entirely clear at times either. When at 12, kids break into these gender groups, very much so, and Jay talks about how they didn't fit with the boys and they didn't fit with the girls, and they began to feel really uncomfortable in this not fitting place and didn't have language to explain what that experience was like. And as parents, we were pretty conservative as far as access to the internet or personal electronic devices. So Jay, unfortunately, didn't have a lot of access to helpful information until they had been struggling for quite a while. For my part, I thought that I knew what it meant to be transgender, but I had never heard the term non-binary. I barely knew what binary meant, and I certainly didn't know what non-binary meant. For those of you who may know computer language, one binary that we think about often is that something is either off or on, 0 or 1. Much of our society and culture presumes a gender binary, that people are either female or male. But for Jay and for many other people who identify as non-binary, this construct doesn't resonate with the personal experience. Jay is transgender because they don't identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. And Jay is non-binary because they don't feel completely male or completely female. So Jay, being transgender and non-binary, asks that we use the pronouns they and them and their as singular pronouns because the other ones don't fit. And I know some people find this mentally challenging. My dad, who is with us here tonight, would admit that certainly after using other pronouns for a while, this they-them thing can be kind of tricky. But we actually use they-them pronouns as singular pronouns all the time. If I say to you, who left that coat over on the table? And you say back to me, I don't know, but when you figure it out, tell them I put it in my office. Tell them, the one person, that their one coat is in my office. We use it all the time, but we don't talk about it. So my dad would tell you that it does take practice, but he would also tell you that he understands how critically important it is and how strong his commitment is to getting it right, even if that means being corrected sometimes. My belief is that if you asked people in this community, in our congregation a few years ago, do we have any folks who are transgender in our community? I believe that many people would have said, no, I don't think so. And in fact, some of us know for sure and certain that there were at least 3, 4, 5 families going through some aspect of gender transition in that very same time frame in this community. It's a quiet network, and many times people really just want to have the freedom to live and be seen for who they are today without sharing a backstory or explanation. But as a mom, I can tell you that the connections that I've had in this community have been invaluable to our personal journey. The mom whose kid came out a year ahead of mine, who was offering me resources that I didn't yet know that we would need. I thank her in my heart all the time. And I like to think that we helped her family out a bit too, because in the very first conversation I had with that mom, I was able to say and share with her that in Rabbi Gurovitz, we have a compassionate, knowledgeable ally that your family can safely come out to if and when you want to. And they did. Eli's mom, Laura Gordon, who's also here tonight, walked a bit ahead of me on this path as well, and she showed me how to own an oneg after a gender transition. I remember her coming up to me and many other people one evening with this confidence and this smile, and you could just feel this internal pride. And she reintroduced me to her child and said, "Sarah, I'd like you to meet my son, Eli," and smiled. And it was all clear. We had known each other way back when the kids were little, and it was just a matter of a reintroduction. The journey of coming out as trans can be breathtakingly beautiful and intricately complex. I would say that the 2 years prior to my child coming out were some of the hardest, darkest, scariest times for our family. The fear and concern I felt as a parent standing right next to a struggling child pales in comparison to the depth of emotion and pain that I imagine Jay was experiencing at that time. One of the best days of my life, though, was an afternoon where, riding in the car, Jay came out to me as transgender, told me the name they wanted us to use, told me the pronouns that we needed to use. And by that evening, our immediate family was on board. Anya, Jay's sister, was ecstatic for her sibling. And you could see the weight lifting off of Jay's shoulders that evening. And I overheard the kids bantering. It was sibling banter that had this ease and this siblingness that I hadn't heard between them for years. Jay and Anya and I were heading to the Hudson Valley in New York State to see my family that weekend for a big family gathering. So when we landed at my dad's house where we were staying, I got on the phone and called the couple of relatives in your family that if you tell them and you set the tone with them, everybody else will soon know. I called those relatives and gave them a heads up. And on Saturday, the three of us went to this family gathering, and it was fine. Jay was Jay, and everybody was fine. And I was swimming in a great deal of gratitude, just recognizing that we have this family that has the capacity to love and accept and embrace, no matter what. And we went back to my dad's house that night, went to sleep on a Saturday evening. We woke up Sunday morning, and Jay and I were sitting with my dad, and my dad flicked on the news, and we learned that there had been a shooting in Florida that overnight. It had happened at Pulse, and Pulse nightclub in Florida was a very popular LGBTQ hangout. So I sat there with Jay as we watched the fatality count climb towards what would ultimately be a total of 49 people who had been murdered in a space that was a safe haven for coming together in joy and full self-expression, the same weekend that my kid came out. The part that I wish folks would most understand is that the anxiety my child and many people we know and love walk through this world experiencing does not stem primarily from tragedies such as the Pulse shooting. The fear that people carry nearly 24/7 all the time comes much more frequently from daily interactions and the anticipation of common everyday exchanges. Just this summer, Jay, in anticipation of a week-long driver's ed class, started asking me, what's the chances I'm going to be called out or publicly embarrassed in this week-long class? And Mama, what do I do if the driving instructor looks at the gender marker on my permit and turns out to be transphobic? Shopping for clothing, the looks, the stares, the glances, and Jay's what ifs. What if someone has an issue with me where I am right now? My kid will now ask me, if I go into this situation, is there a law that will protect me if something goes horribly wrong? With your help, I'd like to be able to continue to say to them, yes, Jay, and give them the peace of the mind that no matter what a person chooses to do or say in a public space, that yes, there is at least a law that protects you. The law that is currently in place in Massachusetts makes it illegal to discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, creed, disability, gender. Currently, people who are transgender are a protected class within that law. Now imagine if you walked into a restaurant or a hotel or a store and the person working there told you, no, I won't serve you, you're Jewish. And imagine if that were legal. That is, in essence, if you take out the word gender identity, switch it for religion, that's in essence what we're talking about. And as Rabbi said, they've crafted the language to be somewhat confusing. We're asking you to vote yes on 3 to keep protections that we already have in place. To vote yes means to make no changes to the law. To vote no, however, would make it legal in public places for people to blatantly discriminate against someone who is transgender. So when you choose to vote yes, you help me be able to continue telling my kid, yes, there is a law that protects you. Now, I know from my years in this community that this community is filled with people who are action-oriented, who want to know, what can I do? How do I make a difference? Our family offers you our top 5 favorite ways. Number 1, please use the name or the pronouns that a person asks you to use, even if you're referencing something that happened long ago before the gender transition. Please understand that reference to what some folks call their dead name, the name that they were given at birth, elicits painful emotions, not only in the person who has transitioned, but also in those of us who see them for who they are and love and care about them. If you slip up, which happens, we know, an apology is okay, but a self-correction in that moment is even better. Our second one on our list is directly from Jay. Jay says, even if you cannot fully understand something a person is going through, you can still choose to support them. And we know this to be true, right, with other health situations and things like that. We may not be able to fully understand a person's experience, but we can still choose to support them through it. The third one is mine, as a mom and as a person who uses public restrooms far too frequently. Please trust that people know which bathroom we're in, that we consciously chose to be in that bathroom, and that we are in the right place. As a mom who had 2 young kids who each have been told you're in the wrong place and reprimanded by grown-ups who made a decision based on, haircut, it can be pretty frightening to go into a restroom and be told that you're in the wrong place. So please trust that we know where we are and that we're supposed to be there regardless of what we're wearing that day or how long or short our hair is or how full or flat our chest is. We know. Number 4, be curious, be educated. If a person offers you the opportunity to ask questions, then do so, please, with respect and sensitivity, of course, but take the opportunity. Recognize, too, though, that people sometimes don't want to answer questions. They just want to come in and be with community or take a delicious dessert off the O-Neg table. Don't assume that everyone wants to tell you their backstory or explain a lot, but conversely, when people do choose to share something this personal and this intimate with you, as folks have chosen to do tonight, please see and recognize the strength and the courage and beauty that is within that choice. And the 5th one, please vote. Please, please, please vote on 3, and also help spread the word to other people about why this one is so important. We often think that here in Massachusetts, it's going to work out, people are progressive, it'll sort itself out, it's going to be okay. And even this evening, a friend asked, like, is this a real threat? Like, is this getting traction? It is a real threat in November for a variety of reasons, and we know that there was enough passion and ignorance to get this onto the ballot. We clearly cannot afford complacency in this situation. And I think you already know this, but here at Congregation B'nai Shalom, we are truly blessed to have amazing leaders who live and breathe Jewish values and understand how to brilliantly advocate for creating inclusive space that feels welcoming. These rabbis of ours reached out to me nearly a year and a half, nearly 2 years ago, to let me know that the Union for Reform Judaism was beginning a fellowship program. And I had an opportunity to apply for a very small grant that allowed us to start a very big project that we believed would open minds and hearts and have the potential to really help the Jewish community. We have a long way to go with our fundraising to finish the complete film, but we want to show you a sneak peek tonight and invite you to help us in reaching our goal. There are stories that need to be told, and there are people who clearly need to hear them. With that, I'd like to share with you a 6-minute film. It features Jake, who's one of our speakers tonight. Jake, through his courage and his willingness to make a difference, is turning our vision for this project and transjewish.org into a reality. So, the film.
Hi, welcome to B'nai Israel. Come on in. I'm very involved with my congregation. B'nai Israel has been a safe haven for me throughout the last 13 years. It's a warm, welcoming community. It's kind of like that Cheers thing when you come into the bar and everybody knows your name. It's, I belong here, and I love that feeling. I grew up in a very non-religious, more cultural Jewish background. When my daughter was about 5, I realized if she's going to be brought up Jewish, I need to belong to a congregation and I need to learn more about Judaism. All right. When I was literally 4 or 5 years old, I can remember vividly feeling very different from other kids and wanting desperately to be a boy. And the way that I took that out was on my brother, because I felt like he really didn't deserve to be a boy because he didn't appreciate the fact that he was so lucky to be a boy. This poor guy had no idea why his sister hated him so badly, but I remember distinctly having a picture taken when he was even just a newborn, and I would not touch him. Like, I sat with my hands on either side of me, and they had to put the baby there, balanced desperately, very precariously, because I would not touch him. And I was 3.5 years old, and I knew at that point he was something that I wanted to be, and I couldn't be. So then growing up...
The inspiration for this project actually began a long time ago. I was sitting in my congregation listening to a performance by Julie Silver, amazing Jewish musician, and Julie was bringing her entire heart and soul to the music that she's sharing with us. And another part that she was very open about was being in a loving, committed relationship with a woman. Seeing it in Julie, it really struck me that there was indeed space for me to show up in Jewish space as authentically me.
If we're dealing with relationships, if we're dealing with trying to be as responsive to individuals who you care about, then it's easy. It's when you start thinking about...
And now, more recently, as a parent of a kid who's trans and being in close connection with other families whose kids are transitioning, I look around and I'm not seeing resources that I can offer. And so from that, started thinking about, well, there are people who are already on this path, who are already in Jewish spaces. Maybe it's an issue of helping folks who are trans and Jewish tell their story in a way that our younger people can see, oh, there is definitely a place for me. It's going to be okay.
One of the highlights if you're going to call it a highlight in my transition, was when I finally came out on Facebook telling friends I've changed my gender and my name to Jake. Walking into the temple, every single person said, "Hey, Jake."
I've been aware of the process for Jake for a while, but I wasn't quite sure when he was going to become public.
He called me by name, said, "Jacob, would you come and carry the Torah?" And it was huge.
Jake was there, and it just sort of was a no-brainer for me to sort of say, Jake, would you come and carry the scroll for us this morning? I hope it was a way to sort of say to him, you're who you are, and we love you. I mean, we loved you when you were Val, and we love you now that you're Jake, and we want to be as supportive as we can.
I couldn't consciously come out and say that I was trans for all those years because I'm a list maker, and I would go to that, oh my God, if I say that I'm transgender, then I have to do this and this and this, and what about work, and oh my God, I have to tell my parents, and I have to tell my friends, and it became so overwhelming. I'd say, okay, you know what, you're good, you can be with women just as you are, and just let it be, you're fine. And then it got to a point where I couldn't, and I wasn't fine, and I needed to be who. Even if it's a year, I want it to be as I am and who I should be.
My hope is that by hearing stories, by falling in love a little bit with the people who are brave enough to tell them on camera and say, this is who I am and this is what I want to tell you about myself, our young people get to see in a very tangible, concrete way, oh, there is space here for me, that you get to be all of who you are and you get to stand in your truth, and those relationships and that community that means so much to you is going to be right here with you, as we hope that a community would be for any milestone, for any part of going through life.
Good evening. Despite you mispronouncing my name, I still love you. I'm Jake Bogner, and I still love you too. I'd like to thank you for having me here tonight. Your rabbi, as she mentioned, was my assistant rabbi, so she has a special place in my heart, always. We miss her a lot. But when she asked me to be a part of this very special program, how could I possibly say no? And when you're also asked by Sarah Kipp, who, as you can see, can make even me look good on a camera, you really can't say no. Sarah has a special talent that is driven by passion and determination to bring out people's stories, and I'm forever grateful for her helping to share mine. I am not your typical transgender story, or maybe I am. The kids today, thankfully, are fortunate to be brought up in a time where they could feel comfortable talking to their parents or teachers or other adults who are in their lives about things that they need. But not all kids are that lucky or have that support system available. I grew up in the 60s when, despite all that make love, not war, and the sexual liberation going on at Woodstock, gender identity really wasn't something I was going to talk to my parents about, nor did I even know what to say. I just knew that I felt different from the time that I was about 5. In some ways, I spent an enormous amount of time and energy trying to be one gender or another. When I was a kid, I tried to learn how to be a girl. It did not come naturally to me. I was a tomboy. I grew up in upstate New York, where my school required girls to wear skirts and dresses to school. I couldn't wait to get home to get changed. Thankfully, in middle school, I was able to wear pants when we moved to San Diego, California, and also in high school when we moved to Connecticut. I came out as a lesbian when I was 19. At the time, it made the most sense to me. I was attracted to women, and I was a woman, so I presumed I was gay. It did not come
It was 1976, and Anita Bryant was on her high horse about the gay people, and my parents were pretty cool and liberal, but when I came out, they were supportive but very worried about what my life would look like. I joined the Navy as after a year floundering in college, I decided that getting away and learning a trade would be good for me, and it was. However, I was discharged for being gay after serving 4 years out of the 5-year commitment. I was honorably discharged, but discharged nonetheless. I had glowing reviews throughout my military service, but that didn't matter. It was a bittersweet ending to what was a very positive time in my life. I began my business career when the dress code required skirts and dresses. I would think to myself that every day is like Halloween. I dress up in this business costume and look like what a woman is supposed to look like, and it was so uncomfortable. But I never wore dresses, but rather always had skirt suits that I had pockets to put my hands in. And I never carried a purse, as I never knew what was supposed to be in there. My wallet seemed so lonely in there, though all the women I know had an abundance of stuff in theirs. In my young adult life, when I was dressed the way I wanted, jeans, t-shirts, button-down shirts, or sweaters, I was often mistaken for a boy. I wore my hair short, not as short as it is now, and I was tall, so inevitably there would be confusion when I would enter the women's bathroom. Either the women walking in with me would think they were in the wrong place, or they would look at me as I was entering as if I was in the wrong place. It was very uncomfortable, to say the least. I remember a time when I was being carded for buying liquor, and I was annoyed, because for Pete's sake, I was 25 years old. And I must have sighed as I was getting my license out of my wallet, and the man behind the counter said, "Well, if you grew a mustache, you'd look much older, and you wouldn't get carded." And I looked at him blankly, and then he realized that I was a woman, and it was awkward and embarrassing for both of us. I had many of those awkward moments. But they were also kind of validating in a weird way, as it was as if I was being seen the way I felt I was on the inside. But I could never imagine myself ever being able to be who I truly felt I was. But it wasn't anything that was going to keep me down. Just more and more, I just dressed the way I wanted and dealt with the way people treated me. I was in a committed relationship with a woman for 22 years, and we adopted a baby girl from Cambodia, who was 9 months old in 2001. We brought her home 4 months before 9/11 happened. I had tried to get pregnant for 6 years prior, and that didn't work out. And every single one of our friends, when we told them that we were trying to get pregnant, turned to Gail and said, "Oh, how exciting. You're going to love being pregnant." And when they were told that I was going to be the one to try and get pregnant, they were shocked. Almost like, "You're too masculine to get pregnant." So even in the LGBTQ community, there was gender role assumptions, and still are in many ways today. Anyway, my daughter Sophie, of course, was and still is the most girly girl on the planet. The minute she could articulate the clothes she wanted to wear, it was dresses, and dressing up like princesses, and when can I wear high heels, and makeup. And it's just who she is. She has no interest in sports, she loves fashion, and ultimately boys. She fortunately also grew up in a time and a place where having 2 moms was not a big deal. She also didn't see a big deal that one of her moms bought clothes in the men's department. When Sophie was little, she would ask me again and again why I never wore dresses or skirts, and I just said that I just didn't like to. So when she was about 5, I decided to wear one of my business suits with a skirt to High Holy Day services, and she was totally surprised to see me like that. But the next day she came up and said, "Please don't ever dress like that again. You just don't look right." You gotta love kids' honesty. Sophie's mom and I split when Sophie was 4 years old, but we've remained very close friends and co-parent her very well. She just went off to college at the University of Rhode Island 3 weeks ago. I just celebrated 5 years with the woman I am currently with, and this lucky woman also got the bonus of going through my transition with me. I'm pretty sure it's not something that she's envisioned going through, but she's been very supportive, as have my parents, my daughter, my family, and my friends. But coming out as transgender when you're 58 is not the same as when you come out in your teens or 20s. Don't get me wrong, it was still emotional and thrilling, but it was also scary. It was daunting, the list of things that had to be done in order to become Jake. But I didn't have to worry about interviewing for a job or to start college while transitioning. And I'm so thankful that I had known 2 friends of mine who had already transitioned years before me, who were a great resource to me in my transition. Through my transition, I've also come to realize that as challenging as it is to transition, my transition affects all the people who love me, and I've learned to be very sensitive to that as well. It is a team effort, this transitioning business. My parents are both now 86 years old, and it's been 2 years since I told them about becoming Jake. And God bless them, because they just want me to be happy. They started calling me Jake immediately, but even now the pronouns throw them. So my mother introduces me as, "This is my son Jake. She lives in Connecticut." But at least she immediately corrects herself, and it's a journey for everyone. I'm also thankful that when I came out, I had worked for General Electric for 28 years, and they had already had policies in place for this situation. Human Resources told me that whatever I needed to make the transition easier, I had their support. Whenever I wanted to start using the men's room, I could. If any employee gave me a hard time, they would be spoken to. It was very liberating and validating to have that kind of support, and I was very grateful. My insurance paid for my surgeries, and I was allowed all the time off for recovery as I needed. I'm also very grateful that because of my height, I can pass as a man. I really think that transgender men have it much easier than transgender women. Our society has very specific ideals of what each gender should look like and act like, and unless a trans woman is short and petite, they may have a hard time looking like what a woman should look like, which puts them at great risk for some very dangerous things happening to them. Not everyone has all of the support and positivity around their transition as I have had. It's for that reason that I'm here speaking tonight. If my story will help someone else feel the courage and support to come out, or for a family member to perhaps understand better what their son, daughter, niece, nephew are going through, then it's worth it. And the protections that have been put in place for the LGBTQ community have been very much a matter of life and death in many cases. They are important, and we really can't afford any of those protections taken away. In closing, I'd like to say that everyone needs to feel good about themselves and not have to worry that they will be attacked or denied employment or housing because they are different. It's a shame that we have to have legal protections set up to protect us, but that's the reality. I hope that my story has helped to give you a face to a group of people who are just trying to live their lives the way that you are. Thanks very much for your time. And now I'd like to introduce a new friend of mine, Eli, who will give you the perspective of being trans from a much younger viewpoint.
Thank you so much, Jake. That was an incredible speech. And thank you, Sarah, for having me. I want to introduce myself. My name is Elijah Cohen Gordon, or Eli. I'm good with either. I'm a senior at Algonquin Regional High School. And right now, all my focus should be on my college applications. Unfortunately, I have a lot of my attention focused right now on something most kids my age don't even have to think about. And before I get to that, I want to tell you about myself. I was assigned female at birth, but I knew from a young age that that wasn't correct. As early as 18 months old, I exhibited trans behavior. I refused to let my mom do my hair and put bows and clips in it because that was something that girls did. When I was 5, my mom had me do dance, and at the backstage of my dance recital, when I was all dolled up, I looked in the mirror and asked my mom, "Why do I look like a girl?" When I was 9, I wondered why I didn't use he, him pronouns and go by Eli, because I preferred that. There's so much more in between that I've forgotten, but I had a pretty stereotypical trans childhood. I begged my parents to let me wear a suit to my bat mitzvah, and after years of battling, I eventually succeeded. I came out as bisexual when I was 9 years old, and I don't think it was a surprise to my parents. They had been waiting for me to come out as a butch lesbian all my life because that's what they thought I was. They didn't think of me as being transgender because you never heard of transgender kids. They barely even knew about being transgender in the first place. Coming out isn't something you do once. You have to keep coming out for the rest of your life. Almost every day I come out to someone new. Since I pass as male now, I don't have to come out as often. Before I was on hormone replacement therapy, people were constantly confused about my gender. I got called ma'am, sir, more times than I can count. People eventually just stopped trying to use gendered honorifics around me, and I couldn't blame them. And I was so excited to start testosterone therapy so I could finally be recognized as male in public. It really hurts not to be recognized as your gender. Cis people usually brush it off, but they don't understand how much it truly hurts. A while ago, when I was first starting my transition, I wrote a thing on my blog, which you can see on my business cards out front, elicgordon.com. I wrote a thing about experiencing gender dysphoria, which is the condition that leads people to identifying as a gender different than the one they are assigned with at birth. I was having a really hard day that day, so I just want to read what I wrote. I didn't want to sit around and let my dysphoria get the best of me, so I decided to write. This is kind of messy, but bear with me. When cisgender people tell me they understand my dysphoria because everyone feels bad about their body, it takes all my strength not to go on a rant right there. But I have to remember, cis people don't understand what it's like to have dysphoria. I understand almost everyone feels uncomfortable with their body. You might not like your nose or your thighs or your eyes, and I get that. Because of the way the media is today especially, we are faced with an unrealistic body types, with the assumption that you must look like this or no one will ever like you. You feel frustrated about your body because it doesn't fit an unrealistic standard, and I get that, and that feeling is genuinely awful. But dysphoria is so much more than that. Wanting to change a part of your body is different than genuinely feeling like you're in the wrong body, like this body isn't you. I used to look in the mirror when I was little and think, is this really me? Am I inhabiting this body? And I'd get really confused. I didn't know I was transgender. I didn't even know who I was as a person. I would see my chest or my hips or even just my feet and want to cry. This isn't me. I felt lost in my own body. When I was around 13, I began to self-harm because even though I knew that this wasn't true, a little part of me hoped that I could get out of this body and I would get my right body and it would be underneath my skin waiting to come out. I know this is wrong now because I know that this is my right body. It's taken me a while to come to that conclusion. When people say, this is your girl body and this is your boy body, I tell them they're wrong. This is just my body. It's not gendered. I have biologically female parts, yes, but that doesn't determine my gender. This is my body. It still makes me beyond uncomfortable, and I wish that I would lose my curves and my feet would grow and I'd become taller, but I know that can't happen, so I have to accept myself. And I see my mom in the back there just making fun of my feet and wanted to point out that I have size 6 children's feet, and I still fit into light-up Skechers. Has my dysphoria gotten better now that I've accepted that this is my body and there's not much more I can do to change it? No. But at least I can deal with it. I can sit down and think, okay, so I feel very uncomfortable with my body right now, but this is my body, and it's not a girl's body because I'm not a girl, and it's not a boy's body because I'm a boy. It's just a body, and it works just like any other body. Don't really know what I'm trying to get across here, but if you have to take one thing away from this, it would be that dysphoria is not just disliking a certain aspect of your body, but genuinely knowing that this body doesn't feel right and doesn't align with you, and it causes extreme anxiety, but you can work through it. Just don't tell a trans person, I know how you feel if you're cisgender or you assigned with the gender you were assigned with at birth. You have a similar situation, but you don't understand and never will, thankfully. If you're trying to help someone with dysphoria, just remind them that their body isn't gendered and it is the right body and it's healthy and it's keeping you alive and that's all it needs to do. And that helps me personally. So I wrote that, I want to say around August of 2015 when I was 14 years old. I started hormone replacement therapy, testosterone, on September 25th, 2016. Testosterone has changed my body dramatically. Unfortunately, it has made me look a lot older than I am. If you guys don't know, I work at Weissman, and at Weissman, you have to be at least 18 to sell the alcohol. And I have people come in my line constantly because they think I'm much older than I am because I have this beard. And people get very disappointed when they find out I was born in 2001. And on March 14th, 2016, I had my top surgery, which is the removal of the breasts. People are so against kids my age having surgery, but they don't understand the pain I went through. Before my top surgery, I had to bind my breasts, and I had a pretty large chest. Chest binders are torture machines. I've bruised my ribs multiple times because of them. You can't wear them for more than 8 hours, and if you sleep in one, it can be extremely dangerous. I wore one for 14 hours once and ended up in the emergency room because I couldn't breathe. My mom would have to hold me in a certain way so my lungs could open and I could get in a decent breath. Insurance only covers transgender surgeries when you turn 18, and we knew I couldn't be in a binder for 4 more years then. My parents went on around a 6-month battle against our insurance company, complete with 3 appeals, and finally my top surgery was confirmed. More doctors and psychologists than I know wrote to our insurance company explaining why I needed the surgery, and I'm forever thankful to them. Now back to why I haven't written my college essay yet, Mom. You all know about Yes on 3 by now, hopefully, but I'm going to read the description of the ballot question from freedommassachusetts.org. This law adds gender identity to the list of prohibited grounds for discrimination in places of public accommodation, resort, or amusement. Such grounds also include race, color, religious creed, national origin, sex, disability, and ancestry. A place of public accommodation, resort, or amusement is defined in existing law as any place that is open to and accepts or solicits the patronage of the general public, such as hotels, stores, restaurants, theaters, sports facilities, and hospitals. Gender identity is defined as a person's sincerely held gender-related identity, appearance, or behavior, whether or not it is different from the traditionally associated with a person's physiology or assigned sex at birth. This law prohibits discrimination based on gender identity and a person's admission to a treatment in any sort of public accommodations. This law requires any such place that has separate areas for males and females, such as restrooms, to allow access to and full use of those areas consistent with a person's gender identity. This law also prohibits the owner or the manager of a place of public accommodation from using advertising or signage that discriminates on the basis of gender identity. A yes vote would keep in place the current law, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender identity in places of public accommodations. A no vote would repeal this provision of the public accommodations law. And all you really need to know, the Public Accommodations Bill has been in place since 2016. A study published in the Boston Globe showed that there had been no link between transgender rights laws and bathroom crimes, and after the passing of the Public Accommodations Law here in Massachusetts, there has been no rise in bathroom crimes in Massachusetts. Let's make a separate bathroom for trans people seems to be the common compromise. But let me tell you firsthand how dehumanizing that is. I was forced to use the nurse's single-stall bathroom in middle school, and having to walk down 3 flights of stairs just to wash my hands and then be yelled at for missing class time is humiliating. Being told that all people like me exist only to scare your children and assault your spouses is mortifying. Being told you don't deserve the right to exist in a public space is barbaric. I am a human, transgender people are humans. We have basic bodily functions like you, and we have emotions like you. We just want to use the bathroom. I promise we don't want to assault you. I don't even want to look at you. I just want to do my business and leave. The only time you should yell at a transgender person in the bathroom is if they don't wash their hands. And you shouldn't even be thinking about gender in that case. I'm 17 years old, and I cannot vote in the upcoming election. I'm counting on complete strangers to vote for my rights. All I can do is campaign and spread the word as much as I can and hope people hear my message. Thank you.
I told you it was my honor and privilege to work with these two. We're going to open up time for question and answer. There are, Rabbi Gervitz has a mic that if you just raise your hand, she'll come, and we'll also repeat the question back for sake of audio.
So I actually have 2 questions, and I'm not sure, there may be people in the audience that can answer one of them. Does anybody know how this question is polling right now? That's number 1. And number 2, if the no vote were to pass, would this then, this might be for a lawyer, be bumped up to the Supreme Judicial Court in terms of its constitutionality?
So the question is, how is it currently polling?
How is it polling? And if the wrong side were to win,
thank you,
would this then go to the Supreme Judicial Court?
Right. So would it be bumped up to the Judicial Court? I do not personally have the answer to either of those. Is there? Do you have the answer in the room?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, it's hi, Ron Gordon. I'm Eli's dad. You can go on ballot. Oops, sorry. You can go on Ballotopedia. Right now, the latest poll, I forget which poll it was, had that 52% were in favor of the law, yes. 38% expressed opposition to the law and would vote no. And there's 11% undecided. In 2016, Actually, the news is actually a little bit worse. In 2016, when the law was passed, 53% were in favor and 30% were not in favor, and the rest were undecided. So the people who are opposed has actually grown a bit. Another thing I'd like to mention in passing while I have the microphone is that we were at Worcester Pride, a couple weeks ago, and we were advocating Yes on 3 there. And what amazed me is that at Worcester Pride, I'd say about 3/4 of the people that I approached had no idea about this question. They had no knowledge of it whatsoever. So take that, the people who you would think would be the most knowledgeable, out to the general public, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done still to get the word out about this.
Thank you.
Let me just mention, in addition to Eli's blog, which is a wonderful education to read, I also want to commend Ron's blog, particularly for parents who are looking for support and resources. Ron, could you just remind me the name of your blog?
Oh, yeah, notopaque.com, which is, if you're not opaque, you're transparent. Transparent, not opaque.
Thank you. Other questions? Any other questions?
Up front.
Yes, at the front. Yes, thank you.
What is the honorific you would use for someone who's non-binary, like sir or ma'am?
I can take that one. Well, I know for Mr. and Mrs., a lot of people use the term mix, which is just MX. Otherwise, it really comes just to personal preference. When I don't know for sir or ma'am, I just go for the first thing that I think of, which half the time tends to be captain, which is pretty gender neutral.
This is really more of a comment than a question for you. I've also been making phone calls on a phone bank, and interestingly enough, I'm calling a lot of folks in the 413 area code, which is the western and more conservative side of the state. And as someone just said, you just said, so many people don't know that this question is even on the ballot, but the people who do know that I've spoken with, oh, they're not sure, and I got off the phone one night, I cried because I changed this woman's mind, because she was like, I don't want anybody in the bathroom. And I do have a question for you regarding that. I've not seen any negative vote no on 3 ads yet, like there have been for vote 1, question 1. Are there any? Have you seen? I have not seen any, and I'm just curious what they're going to do.
One just came out the other day, actually. That is it's very dehumanizing. It's in a women's restroom. A woman's in the restroom, and then you see a male in the restroom behind her making moaning noises and saying, do you want the women in your restroom to feel like this? That's the basic gist of the ad. What really confuses me is that people are like, I don't want them in the restroom. I'm like, what restroom do you want me in? They're like, oh, you're the exception. I want you in the men's restroom. And it's not like that. And once again, what I didn't write down in my speech, there have been statistics to show that you were more likely to be assaulted by a congressman in a bathroom than a trans person.
But what about the other side? Is there a PR campaign in favor of this side? I mean, I haven't seen anything to that effect either.
FreedomMassachusetts.org, along with the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition, are doing incredible work right now. So if you want to go to FreedomMassachusetts.org, they have an incredible campaign for Vote Yes on 3 right now.
What about on TV?
On TV, I haven't seen anything yet, unfortunately.
I spoke with...
Thanks, Dad.
Sorry. I spoke with Mason Dunn, who is the director of the Transgender Political Coalition, and he says that there will be ads leading at the very end of this political season. So toward mid to late October, there'll probably be some TV ads. I asked him that same very question. You know, that's really the best way to get the word out, but it's very expensive. Right now, as it stands, the Yes on 3 has they've raised about $2.5 million or so, and the other side has really very, very little money. But I think that's a tactic to get us comfortable, because I think next month there'll be a blitz of money for them. There will. They have a national organization that's supporting them called Alliance of Defense of Freedom or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it's a very wealthy organization, and they're supporting they're supporting ballot questions like this.
Yeah, one of the things that's important, aside from what this means for real people's lives in this state, is that there are organizations in many other states around the country who are looking to see what happens in Massachusetts. Because if these equal protections are rolled back in Massachusetts, then game on. The rest of the country these organizations will push to follow suit. So there's a lot of weight on this. I know that Freedom for Massachusetts was aiming initially to try and raise about $8 million. So at $2.5 million, they're well below what they hope to have in order to run ad campaigns, which are very expensive on TV. So I know people earlier this evening were asking me, where can I donate? So Freedom for Massachusetts is doing the lion's share of the organizing and the advertising. I have to say the Boston Globe has been doing an incredible job of being a place where great op-eds and articles are being written. But that's a place for people to donate to help magnify the campaign. And you heard Sarah talk about transjewish.org as a program, a project which we hope in the longer term will be a resource that enables more Jewish communities to have this conversation, to educate their members, and to provide a resource for the members of their communities who are transgender. Laura, were you going to add something before?
Human Rights Campaign also has amazing.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Hi, I'm the mom. That mom. The Human Rights Campaign, HRC, has amazing videos all over social media that are really easy to share. And they're targeted right to Massachusetts right now for this ballot initiative. And there's so many, Sarah, you were saying it's a pretty tight community. So a bunch of our friends have been interviewed, and it's as easy as clicking it and sharing it all over social media, anywhere you can. That would be really appreciated.
Yes, Beth.
Are you willing to speak at Hillel's? I'm the Hillel Dr. Clark, and it's a very large community of transgender and LGBT community.
Yeah, my mom went to Clark, actually. So.
All right. You would be very welcome there.
Yes.
Take a business card at the end of the evening.
There it is. It's pretty much written itself. I just need to actually sit down.
So much for my anonymity. Did you indicate in I don't want, oh no. In the tete-a-tete with your mom that you were remiss in not having taken care of your college application by now?
I'm going to do it, Mom. It's going to be done before, when's the deadline? So the early action deadline is November 1st. So
what I want to suggest, young man,
yes,
is that this evening your remarks are your application.
That's what my mom said.
You're in.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts or questions that people wish to raise this evening? So I want to take the opportunity. I'll come back to this. I want to, first of all, from the bottom of my heart, thank all three of you for an incredible presentation and opening up a sharing of personal stories and journeys that really help those of us for whom this is a new experience understand a little better and learn a little more. So thank you so much for those contributions. I again want to encourage people, you heard, this really is a real issue where we're not entirely sure what will happen in November. If you are available to join, I would say us, unfortunately, my stepdaughter's getting married on October 7th. That's not the unfortunate thing. That's a wonderful thing. But it means that I'm not available personally for the Canvas Day. But Elaine Solomon, who's raising her hand, is our congregational point person. So if there's any communications that need to be done closer to the time, Elaine will be reaching out. Again, on the table on your way out, there's a couple of things that I want to bring to your attention. One is, please take a moment to sign a postcard and leave it here. We will get it to Keshet. Keshet is the umbrella organization, Jewish organization, who's deeply involved in this campaign and does advocacy and education on all kinds of LGBT issues and provides resources for the community. If you sign a postcard, we will get it to Keshet, and they will be in communication with you and let you know about other opportunities beyond October 7th. If you think you might be free to join us for a Canvas Day in the Framingham area on October 7th, please fill out the sign-in form, and we will then be in communication with you. There will be a communication to the congregation at large, letting them know what the issues are, giving them links to Freedom for All Massachusetts and Trans-Jewish, and other ways in which people can get educated and connected. I want to just briefly add a comment. I was at an event just a week and a half ago, and I met one of our local Massachusetts congressional representatives, Carolyn Dykema. Anybody who's met her, she's incredibly impressive. She was away at a family event today and wasn't sure if she would be back in town to be able to join us, so she hasn't made it tonight, but she and I had a communication, very much was an advocate of this when it first passed through the Massachusetts Congress, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to, on her behalf, say that this is something that many like herself in the Massachusetts legislature feel very strongly about, and are really hoping that the community will step up and come out the right way on this. We can do that under, if you go to the Brit Olam, which talks about upcoming opportunities to do mitzvah, which is where we mentioned the Canvas Day. I can add that there, and it will also go out as an email to the communication, to the congregation. Yes, so on the website, look under the community pull down. Under community is mitzvah opportunities. If you go to mitzvah opportunities, there will be a little Brit Olam that pops up on the side. That is the place to go to sign up, to make a commitment, to be involved in an act of social justice with your community in this 40th year. And we will be posting ongoing opportunities to do community projects that we are part of and helping to organize. And right now, the October 7th event is listed there. Thank you so very much, and thank you all for coming. Chag Sameach.